Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the ancient world, not with a clash of swords or a blaze of miracles, but with a far gentler sound, the soft scuff of leather against dry earth. You're in Judea now, walking behind Jesus. The wind carries warm dust, the olive trees lean with age, and the stones beneath your feet have stories older than empires. But what really grounds you, literally, are your sandals. Thin, tough, and shockingly uncomfortable. You'll learn quickly, these aren't the plush foam things you leave by the door in summer. These are survival tools. Crude ones, too. Your feet aren't ready. You've grown up with socks, with pavement, with maybe one or two ironic barefoot beach days a year. But here? Sand, grit, animal droppings, broken pottery shards. Your toes are in for it. And don't even try complaining, people around you walk miles like this every day, with soles as cracked as dry figs. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start the day early. Of course you do. The air is barely moving, and the stars are fading out like tired actors after a night performance. You roll off your sleeping mat, already dusty. Outside, the town of Nazareth is stirring. Roosters complain. A donkey somewhere expresses his lifelong disapproval of mornings. You find your sandals by the door. If you're lucky, no scorpions curled up inside. You remember the trick: flip them over with a stick first. Check for movement. All clear. Slipping them on isn't like stepping into sneakers. No soft insoles, no springy arch support. Just two raw, slightly warped pieces of cured leather strapped together with coarse twine or a stretched animal sinew. They barely hug your foot. It's more like you place your feet on them and hope they follow along. As you step out, the road greets you not with welcome, but with challenge. It's not a road, the way we think of it, more like a wide track of pounded earth, etched with the shallow prints of goats, ox carts, and 1,000 travelers before you. Every step kicks up tiny clouds. The grit gets under your sandal straps immediately, but you walk on. Jesus, always ahead somehow, doesn't seem to notice. He moves like someone who's been doing this his whole life, which, of course, he has. You, on the other hand, can already feel a little rubbing under your arch. That's going to be a blister by noon. No doubt, people shuffle past, nodding good morning. Some wear similar sandals, a few go barefoot, usually kids, or the desperately poor. Every once in a while, someone strides by in Roman caligy, military boots, thick-soled and laced halfway up the shin. They make a harsh clap-clap against the rocks. The soldiers don't smile. They rarely do. You catch a glimpse of someone limping. Not unusual. The average Judean walks 8 to 10 miles a day. Foot care isn't just hygiene, it's survival. But we'll get to that. For now, keep walking. You're heading to the next town, maybe Cana or Magdala. The road dips and rises, winding through olive groves and low, sunburnt hills. A shepherd waves from a distance. Someone passes you with a heavy sack and a heavier expression. The wind shifts. Dust lifts in swirls. You feel it coating your calves, sneaking under your tunic, grinding between your toes. Your sandals flap slightly as you walk, no tight modern fit here. Just loops and logic. Every pebble feels personal. This is how Jesus moved through the world. Step by step. In sandals not much better than yours. No cushioned ride for the Son of Man, but something quiet grows on you as the miles pass. A rhythm. The squeak of leather softening. The give of the earth beneath your heel. You learn to avoid sharp rocks without thinking. You walk a little lighter, adjusting your gait instinctively. You squint against the sun. You start to notice the smell of fig trees, the buzz of flies, the shush of wind through wheat, and maybe, you don't say it aloud, but maybe, you start to understand why he walked so much. Not just because there were no chariots, but because there's something sacred in the slowness. Something revealed only when your feet hurt, your sandals groan, and the road never ends. Still, your heel is definitely bleeding now. You take a break on a flat stone. A kind woman passes by and hands you a fig, unasked. She nods, sees your sandals, and smiles the way someone smiles at a puppy trying stairs. You'll get there. You loosen the straps. They've already left marks across your instep. The soles are tough, yes, but not invincible. And neither are you. Now think of Jesus walking this same road, again and again, every village, every errand, every hungry soul calling his name. The sandals bore it all. Quietly. Just as they do now for you. Historians still argue whether Jesus' sandals had backs to them, like a heel strap, or were just flat, front-laced affairs. Some say they were the simple fisherman's style, more like a thong, minimal coverage, maximum exposure. Others believe his might have been a gift, better made, perhaps stitched with care by a local cobbler who didn't charge the famous teacher. We'll never know. But we can imagine, and so you keep walking, not fast, not slow, but steady. Dust in your throat. Sand between your toes. And just ahead, Jesus turns briefly, gives a small nod, and keeps going. You rise. Your feet protest. But your sandals, they're starting to feel like part of you now. You're still walking. The sun has made it clear it has no plans to take it easy today. You squint toward the next bend in the dusty road, sandals scuffing and sliding. Each step confirms what you already suspect. These shoes were never designed with comfort in mind. They were built for survival. Welcome to the world of ancient materials. No factories. No foam soles. No comfy memory foam inserts like the ones you once saw advertised by a man jumping on a trampoline in slow motion. No, your sandals are a quiet, humble symphony of raw, natural elements, each one gathered by hand, soaked in oil or sun, then tied together by someone with strong fingers and low expectations. First, the sole. It's likely made of thick leather, probably goat or cowhide. Stiff at first, it softens over time, kind of like your stubborn uncle. Sometimes, instead of leather, the poor used woven palm fibers or braided flax, both more biodegradable than durable. Let's just say that stepping on a thorn in those was a daily devotional you didn't sign up for. Now you look down again. That thin strip across your big toe? Probably made from twisted sinew, or maybe even rawhide. It squeaks a little every time you shift your foot. But it holds. Mostly. You can't help but wonder how long it'll last. Some archaeologists say the average pair barely made it 6 months with regular wear. You try not to calculate how many steps, that is, the straps themselves, those long loops around your ankle, are usually made of either narrow leather thongs or plant-based twine. A few fancier pairs used dyed cords. But you're not in the fancy bracket. You're in the just happy they haven't snapped bracket. That's fine. Jesus wore something like this. So did everyone else, from shepherds to rabbis to busybody neighbors who always seemed to be sweeping their front steps when gossip arrived. And then, there's the smell. Not offensive, not quite. But definitely noticeable. Tanned leather mixed with human sweat, dust, and maybe the faintest whiff of sheep. Your sandals have already absorbed your footsteps, your stumbles, and that moment you stepped in something you'd rather not name. You pause under a lone fig tree for some shade, sandals off, feet up. You can see the crosshatch pattern of straps now imprinted into your skin. One of the toe loops is beginning to fray. You mentally file it under problems for tomorrow, which in the ancient world is the default setting. You pass a group of women drawing water from a shallow well. Their sandals are similar, slimmer, more delicate, but functionally the same. One has wrapped a colorful piece of linen around her ankle strap, both decorative and practical. Sandal bling, 1st century edition. Historians still argue whether most sandals were locally made or traded from town to town. Some evidence suggests that larger cities like Jerusalem had professional cobblers, while villages relied on traveling tradesmen or just made do with family handiwork. Either way, you weren't buying a new pair unless you absolutely had to. In most cases, you repaired them yourself, with whatever thread or scrap you could find. Ingenuity was the currency of the poor. You think about that. About the daily effort it took just to keep your shoes working. No buy one get one offers. No lost and found bins. Just your 2 feet and the strips of hide between them and the unforgiving earth. A breeze picks up. Dry leaves rattle somewhere. A passing cart stirs up more dust, and a child behind it grins, barefoot, running like someone who's never had a stubbed toe in his life. You stand again and notice something odd. The sandals are starting to mold to your feet. Not in a nice orthopedic way, more like a resigned, fine, we'll try to keep up, sort of way. The leather flexes just a little more with each step. The straps leave less of a bite. Maybe this is what they meant by breaking them in, more like they break you in return. You catch sight of Jesus again, just ahead. His stride is steady, easy. His sandals look worn but dependable. If you squint, you can see the darker imprint where his toes have pressed in from years of walking. You wonder who made his pair. Was it someone he healed? Someone who owed him a favor? Or did he make them himself, as a young carpenter, just before the world changed? Either way, he walks without complaint. Without pause. As if he trusts the road and the shoes to take him exactly where he needs to go. You try to mirror that. You fail, mostly. But the effort counts. You turn onto a rocky incline. Your feet slide, then grip. The sandals protest, groaning a bit at the pressure, but they hold. Up ahead, Jesus pauses at a spring. He crouches, splashes water on his face, wipes his hands on the hem of his tunic. You do the same, water cold, shockingly so, and for a moment, the road doesn't seem so long. Point one of your sandal straps is soaked now, and it's making an awful squelch. But still, you walk. This is what it's like to follow the teacher. Not just with your heart or your mind, but with your actual, aching feet. Through olive groves, across rough hillsides, past cities whose names you've only ever heard in sermons. Step after dusty step, and all of it, wrapped in the whispering hush of ancient fibers, the soft thud of tired soles, and the knowledge that your feet are now part of something older than you can understand. By midday, the sun is merciless. Not angry, exactly, just indifferent. It watches you from high above, bathing everything in a flat, unflinching light. You blink hard and pull your head covering tighter. The road shimmers. And beneath you, your sandals are starting to talk back, not with words, of course. But the creaks and tugs, the way the left one pulls slightly to the side now, these are old sandal dialects. You're becoming fluent. You notice the dust has changed texture here. It's finer, softer, almost powdery. That means one thing: you're nearing a market road. The kind that gets trampled by animals and people alike, ground into something approaching flower by sheer human foot traffic. Every step kicks up a little cloud. It puffs up around your ankles and settles into the rim of your sandal strap. The dust will be in your hair, your ears, your teeth by nightfall. It'll line your nostrils. It might even flavor your lunch, but there's movement ahead. More travelers now, families, merchants, a shepherd with his flock, who looks like he's been awake for 3 years straight. Their feet tell stories too. Some wear sandals like yours. Others are more worn, patched over and over with mismatched scraps. One man has strapped bits of bark to his heels. Desperate? Inventive? Both. You catch up to an older woman carrying a jar on her head. Her sandals have what looks like a cloth wrap beneath them, maybe padding, maybe protection, maybe just the last clean fabric she owns. She walks like she's done it since birth, steady and proud. You nod. She doesn't nod back. Not out of rudeness, she just doesn't need to. Her sandals speak for her. Off to the side of the road, a camel grumbles loudly. Probably about taxes. You share his mood. Soon, the market comes into view. Rows of small stalls, smells of garlic and fish and something vaguely herbal. Clay pots lined up like sleepy soldiers. Traders call out prices. A few kids run between legs and carts, sandals flapping like lazy birds. You wander in behind Jesus, who barely seems to notice the chaos. His pace doesn't change. He moves like the ground is always ready for him, like the dust clears just a little when he passes. You, on the other hand, stub your toe on a loose brick and let out a noise that's technically a hymn. If you squint, there's a sandal maker here. Of course there is. You spot him in the corner, surrounded by leather scraps, bone awls, and half-finished shoes. He's old. Possibly ancient. He wears a headband soaked through with sweat and smells faintly of goat glue. But his hands move fast, threading and pulling, tightening and testing. You get closer. His sandals, ironically, look worse than yours. He catches your eye and gestures toward a pile of soles. Try one, he rasps. You shake your head politely. You're not buying. But you do ask, how long does it take to make a pair? He shrugs. If the leather's good, half a day. If the knife is sharp, less. Do they last? Long enough, he says, then spits into the dust, long enough. That's the ancient world in 2 words, you thank him and move on. Behind you, he's already forgotten you. You pass a few Roman officials arguing over something. One wears sandals that are suspiciously ornate, thick leather, brass studs, and a dyed border. Luxury footwear in the land of dry bread and hard beds. You wonder if his feet ever touch dust, but mostly, people are just walking. Sandals slapping, shuffling, sliding across packed earth. It's a steady rhythm. You start hearing it like music, low, percussive, earthy. A whole civilization moving forward one dusty footstep at a time, then you see it, a stall selling sandal grease. Yes, sandal grease, the man explains, it's a mix of olive oil, animal fat, and ground herbs. Used to soften leather, prevent cracking, and, if you believe the sales pitch, keep scorpions away. You raise an eyebrow. He nods solemnly. They hate time. You buy a pinch anyway. Jesus chuckles quietly behind you. It's unclear if it's about the time or the salesman. You find a shady wall, sit down, and rub a bit into your sandal straps. They darken instantly, soaking it up like they've been waiting for this their whole lives. It feels good, cool, slick, like you're giving your sandals a small spa day. As you sit, a boy plops down next to you. He's maybe 10, barefoot, and holding a tiny sling. He asks if your sandals help you walk faster. You tell him no. They mostly help you not die of blisters. He nods seriously. Mine ran away, he says. You blink. Your sandals? Yeah. I left them outside and the goat ate one. You offer him a fig and he accepts like it's gold. Then he runs off, barefoot, faster than you could dream of moving, sandals or no. Historians still argue whether children commonly wore sandals or went barefoot by default. Some believe shoes were reserved for special occasions or long journeys. Others suggest that only the wealthier families bothered at all. Regardless, you now know one thing for certain: goats were the real enemy. You rise, press your feet back into the sandals, and resume walking. The leather feels different now. Softer, yes, but also familiar. Like it knows you. Like it's begun, slowly, to trust your steps. The creak is still there, but it's quieter. You've both accepted the situation. Jesus pauses at the edge of the market, waiting for you to catch up. You do. Barely. He gestures to the road ahead. Another path. Another village. Another day of walking. You nod. You're ready. Sort of. The sandals groan beneath you. But they hold, and so, you walk. You don't notice the pebble until it's too late. It wedges under your heel like a divine prank, small and smug. You stop mid-step, wince, and try that awkward hop-scoot move, one sandal half off, toe pointed, dignity nowhere to be found. Jesus looks back. Doesn't say a word. But the corner of his mouth definitely twitches. You fish out the culprit and glare at it. It's unremarkable. Just a rock. But you make a mental note to write a strongly worded parable about it someday. The road here winds through olive groves. their silver-green leaves whispering in the breeze. Your sandals crunch softly on fallen twigs and the occasional overripe fruit. This is the part of Judea that travel scrolls never mention, quiet, uneven, and riddled with natural trip hazards. You start to pay closer attention to how you walk. Not out of paranoia, well, maybe a little, but because it turns out that ancient sandals don't forgive bad posture. You start landing more on the balls of your feet. You take shorter steps. You begin walking like someone who knows blisters personally. A traveling scribe passes by. He's got a bag of scrolls over one shoulder and a curious limp. His sandals are odd, more closed around the foot, with stitched sides. Probably custom-made. Maybe even imported. You wonder if he traded a few verses of Isaiah for them. He doesn't stop to chat, but he mutters something in Aramaic that might have been, "Blessed are the calloused." You decide to accept it as a compliment. Further along, the path narrows. To your left, dry terraces with fig trees. To your right, a slope of sharp stones and scrub brush. And underfoot, loose gravel. The worst, you feel every shift of your soul now. The leather stretches and flexes, molding to each rock like it's trying to please everyone. It's a very people-pleasing sandal. You respect that. But you also start to miss sidewalks. Your toes inch forward with each step, pressing into the front strap. This is where ancient sandals earned their reputation. There were no toe boxes, no heel cups. Just a slab of leather and your own wishful thinking. Still, you manage. Mostly because the scenery distracts you. There's a buzz of bees from a nearby apiary, a hawk riding a thermal above, and the faint ring of someone singing in a field. It's in these quieter moments that you start to feel it, not just the ache in your feet, but the connection. Like the land itself is listening. Like every footprint matters, even if it fades by sunset. You pass a shepherd resting beneath a rock outcrop. He waves. His feet are bare. His sandals hang from his staff, tied at the laces. You nod back, wondering if that's the ultimate power move, knowing when not to wear them at all. Historians still debate whether sandals were considered sacred or merely practical. Some suggest removing them was a sign of respect, like Moses at the burning bush. Others think it was more like a first-century, shoes off at the door, policy. Either way, it's clear these humble bits of leather had symbolic weight, and literal weight, too. Yours feel heavier than they did an hour ago. You stop near a spring and let your feet dangle in the water. The relief is immediate. Cold trickles between your toes, washing off the road's stubborn cling. You splash your sandals too, letting them soak. The leather darkens again, curls at the edges, lets out a tiny sigh. Jesus is already seated nearby, hands cupped under the stream. His sandals lie beside him, dust-caked and frayed. They look tired. Holy, but tired. It's strange to think about it, how much of his ministry happened while walking. Not just standing on hillsides or riding boats, but walking. Long miles. From Judea to Galilee. From the Jordan to Jerusalem. Through markets and wilderness, across borders and back roads. Always walking. Always wearing the same type of sandals you're in now, not because he had to. But because that's how the message traveled, one dusty footprint at a time. You lie back on the warm stone, sandals drying in the sun. A fly lands on your shin and you flick it off half-heartedly. This, too, is part of the ancient rhythm: rest, dust, sun, repeat. Somewhere nearby, a lizard skitters across the rock face, its tiny claws tapping like impatient drumsticks. You glance at your sandal strap again. One edge is definitely fraying more. You'll need to rewrap it with something soon, maybe a spare thread from your tunic hem. You've seen people do that. You'll figure it out. That's the beauty of these sandals. They're never perfect. But they're always fixable. Like the people who wear them, you hear Jesus rise. His steps are soft, measured. You slip your feet back in, the straps now cool and slightly stiff from the water. They creak in protest. You do, too, but you stand. The road waits, unwinding before you like a scroll, one that tells stories not through ink, but through footprints. Through the slow, stubborn, faithful walk of a teacher and those dusty few who dared to follow him, sandals and all. And so, once again, you walk. You've been walking long enough that your feet feel oddly distant, like they belong to someone else. Someone more rugged. Someone who doesn't flinch every time they step on a thorn, but the road, bless its uneven heart, keeps going. This stretch is flatter, almost inviting. The sky above you is wide and pale, the kind of blue that makes you squint even under a head covering. The breeze kicks up little whirlwinds of dust, teasing the edges of your robe and slipping slyly beneath your tunic. You're fairly certain it's trying to be inappropriate. Jesus is ahead, not far. His pace is calm, and somehow, his robe never gets caught in a thorn bush. Yours has been snagged twice today. You suspect it's a divine skill you haven't unlocked yet. You glance down at your sandals. The leather's still damp from the stream earlier, but the straps have dried enough to stiffen again. They dig in just slightly behind your ankle. You adjust one with your toe, a move you've perfected over the past few days, sort of a dusty shuffle and tug combo. Very stylish. Very Judean chic. A caravan passes in the opposite direction, traders from the Decapolis, judging by their accents and the unmistakable aroma of pickled fish. Their sandals are different. Heavier soles, a cross-lacing up the calves, clearly meant for long hauls and serious bargaining. One woman notices your worn sandals and offers you a sympathetic smile. You nod like someone who enjoys pretending he meant to wear the rustic pair today. As they pass, you overhear something interesting. They're heading to a town that's hosting a Roman census. Which means roads, taxes, and lots of people with opinions. You make a mental note to steer clear unless you're in the mood for paperwork and loud uncles. The landscape shifts again. Low hills roll in like sleepy animals, dotted with tufts of grass and scattered stones. You can hear the distant bleating of goats, though you still carry trauma from the last goat encounter. Keep moving. You start noticing something curious: the shape of the trail itself. Worn deeper in the middle, higher on the edges. It's the sandal effect. Thousands of feet pressing the same paths year after year, reshaping the land. It's oddly poetic. You step into a particularly deep groove and almost trip. Poetic or not, these sandals still don't come with shock absorbers. As the path curves around a cluster of fig trees, you hear footsteps behind you. Quick, light. A teenager catches up, barefoot, dust-covered, and grinning like he knows something you don't. He carries a woven basket and what looks like a hand-forged knife tucked into his belt. Dangerous? Possibly. Hungry? Definitely. He nods at your sandals and says, "You tie those yourself?" You glance down. Sort of. They came like this. He snorts. No wonder they're rubbing. And just like that, you've been roasted by a 14-year-old in the middle of nowhere. He walks beside you a few steps, then gestures toward your ankle strap. Loosen the back one. Tighten the front too. That way, the heel doesn't slide. He does it mid-stride with his own invisible sandals, just pantomiming the moves. You follow his advice. To your surprise, it helps. Historians still argue whether there was a standardized way to lace first-century sandals. Most agree that variations existed by region, profession, and personal preference. Some believe there were specific lacing patterns for Roman soldiers, others for merchants, and some for temple priests. Apparently, your style is called confused peasant. The teen peels off into a grove and disappears, like some dusty sandal ghost. You never even got his name. But your feet are grateful. The terrain grows rockier again. Big, flat stones embedded in the path, possibly old Roman paving, though uneven and cracked now. You can imagine some imperial engineer 80 years ago shouting at local laborers to make it level, only to be ignored thoroughly. A sudden gust lifts your robe enough to reveal your knees. Scandalous, you glance at Jesus, who's seated on a nearby stone, eating a handful of dried dates. He tosses you one. You catch it, barely, and pop it into your mouth. Sweet, sticky, a little gritty from dust. Still better than half the snacks in the wilderness. There's something calming about this pace. No rush. No schedule. Just the rhythm of steps, the creak of leather, the pulse of your heartbeat syncing with the road. It's not glamorous, this life, but it's strangely honest. You pass by a crumbling milestone, half buried and worn smooth. Faint inscriptions hint at distances, probably to Jerusalem or Jericho. You can't quite read it. Jesus can. He smiles slightly and keeps moving. It hits you then, how much history lives beneath your feet. Every step compresses thousands of years. Abraham might have walked this same path. Ruth. David. Maybe even Elijah, sandals flapping defiantly behind him. You feel small. In a good way. The sun has begun to slide down its arc, turning gold and hazy. Shadows lengthen, and you can feel the road start to cool. Your sandals relax too, softer now, molded to your walk. Almost content, you crest a hill and see the shimmer of a village below. Smoke from cook fires, tiny moving figures, and, blessedly, flat ground. You sigh. Jesus pauses beside you, surveys the scene, then says, "We'll rest soon." You believe him. You shift your weight from one foot to the other. The sandals hold. They always do. The village greets you not with trumpets or applause, but with the lowing of oxen and a woman throwing out yesterday's dishwater. Honestly, it feels perfect. You step onto packed earth, smoother than the road but still peppered with the occasional shard of pottery or olive pit. Your sandals give a soft slap with each step, and you suddenly realize you've picked up the village rhythm without even trying. Left, right, pause, nod to the old man chewing something mysterious, step again. Jesus walks ahead, head low, greeting a few familiar faces with that polite, "Yes, I may have healed your cousin, but no, I don't do that on demand. Kind of waved at a few kids spot him and start giggling. One girl points at your feet. Your sandals look tired, she says, not unkindly. You glance down. She's right. The toe strap is flopping slightly, and there's a suspicious crack forming in the heel area. It's the kind of flaw you notice after 6 hours of walking and 3 unfortunate encounters with goat droppings. You smile at the girl. So are my legs. She laughs and runs off. Jesus stops near a low wall. He sits, motions for you to join. The sun is melting now, dripping orange and pink across the dusty rooftops. Someone is baking flatbread, you can smell the charred edges, and a donkey complains about something in the distance. Probably taxes. You slip your sandals off. Slowly. Releasing your feet feels like opening a jar that's been sealed too long. A hiss of relief escapes you. This, right here, is why ancient people rarely walked barefoot unless they had to. The ground holds heat long after sunset, and tiny pebbles seem to have a vendetta. Still, you give your soles a quick check. No major damage. Just the usual layers of dust, sweat, and humble regret. A woman approaches, holding a bundle of flax. She looks at your sandals, raises an eyebrow, and says, "You could reinforce those with goat sinew." You blink. That's specific. She shrugs. It holds better than thread. If you're not squeamish. You file that away under things I did not expect to learn today. Historians still argue how widespread such repairs were. Some evidence suggests that common folks often used whatever was on hand to keep sandals functional. Sinew, vine, strips of worn tunic, even melted resin. Sandals were an investment, not a fashion statement. When they wore out, you fixed them. Or you went barefoot and suffered the scorn of every grandmother in Judea. You trace your fingers over the cracked leather, imagining the sandal's journey: dry hills, bustling marketplaces, shady temple courtyards. All without a single modern arch support. And yet, they endured. The woman sits beside you, begins threading her flax into cord. You're following the rabbi? You nod. Trying to. She doesn't look up. Then your sandals will need to last. There's no judgment in her voice. Just quiet certainty, like she's seen plenty of sandals come and go, and plenty of followers, too. You glance over at Jesus. He's got one sandal off, the other half untied. His feet are dusty, marked by lines where the straps cut in. Not clean. Not miraculous. Just human. It makes you feel better somehow. Children play nearby, tossing stones and squealing. One of them wears sandals so large they slap against his ankles like sandals trying to escape. He trips, goes down hard, and pops up laughing. That's the thing about kids, they fall better than adults. Fewer expectations. Someone brings water. A ceramic jug, cool to the touch. You pour a little over your feet, wincing as it hits a raw spot near your heel. You're tempted to complain, but then you remember, this is luxury. You're sitting down. There's bread. There's water. Your feet still work. That's a holy trifecta in this part of the world. The evening deepens. Shadows stretch. A few oil lamps flicker to life, casting golden halos against mud brick walls. You slip your sandals back on, just loosely. They feel different now, less like tools and more like quiet companions. Jesus stands. You do too. You wander through the village slowly, stopping near a small well. It's a communal place, half gossip hub, half spiritual metaphor. Someone's drawing water, someone else is tying their donkey, and an older woman is telling a story you only half hear. You lean against a wall, adjusting your sandal again. That cracked heel is going to be a problem if you don't do something soon. Maybe goat sinew isn't such a bad idea. Historians love to discuss the symbolic meaning of feet in biblical culture. Feet were often considered unclean. Washing them was a sign of welcome, humility, even intimacy. Jesus, of course, took it further, washing his disciples' feet before the Last Supper. A gesture that rattled them more than any parable ever could. You look at your feet. Not exactly holy. But maybe holiness isn't about clean feet, it's about where they take you, and right now, yours are taking you to dinner. You follow the scent of lentils and roasted garlic to a courtyard lit with oil lamps. Someone has set out simple bowls, flatbread stacked high like sacred frisbees. You sit, cross-legged, careful not to tug your ankle strap too tight. Someone says a blessing, and then, you eat. The food is warm, humble, honest. The kind that tastes better when your legs ache. You dunk bread into lentils, tear off a fig, and feel your body relax from the inside out. Across from you, Jesus is smiling. Not saying much. Just watching. Noticing. You take another bite. This is what the road leads to, not always miracles or crowds, but moments like this. Simple. Dusty. Sacred in ways no scroll ever quite explains, and tomorrow, you'll put those sandals back on. You'll adjust the strap again. You'll probably step on another pebble. But you'll walk, because that's what followers do. The sky is charcoal now, sprinkled with more stars than you thought possible. There's no torchlight to drown them, no city hum to distract you. Just constellations you can't name and the faintest trace of camp smoke rising like a ribbon from a dying fire. You lie back on a woven mat near the edge of the courtyard, sandals off again, feet up just slightly on a rolled cloak. Jesus is nearby, quiet as always, looking like someone who's thinking 12 thoughts at once and waiting for the world to catch up. Your sandals rest beside you. One of them leans slightly to the left, like it's exhausted too. It's funny, in a way. You think of sandals as tools, but they've also become characters in your journey. The loyal sidekicks. The overworked foot huggers. The barrier between you and a world full of tiny, aggressive rocks. And as you lay there, eyes on the stars, you remember something someone said earlier in the day, maybe the woman with the flax, or maybe the kid who roasted your lacing skills. They mentioned how the sole of a sandal would eventually carry the imprint of your foot. Your heel, your arch, your unique rhythm of walking would press slowly into the leather until the sandal became yours in a way nothing else could. There's something beautiful about that. Historians still debate what kind of sandals Jesus actually wore. Some say basic rawhide tied with simple thongs, others think they were more elaborate, maybe a gift from a wealthy follower. A few fringe theories even suggest he went barefoot more often than not, though that would be bold, considering the region's thorns, scorpions, and famously unfiltered donkey deposits. Either way, the point remains, sandals mattered. You hear soft footsteps in the dust. Someone walking slowly, trying not to wake the sleepers. Their sandals whisper against the ground, and it's almost soothing. Like the desert is sighing, the fire cracks softly. A goat sneezes somewhere in the darkness, you close your eyes. In your half-sleep haze, you start dreaming, not vividly, just glimpses. A market stall filled with different sandal styles, from soldier thick to priest delicate. A child trying on his first pair, struggling with the knots. A woman reinforcing a worn sole with bits of papyrus and twine. A Roman officer complaining about pebbles getting stuck under his arch. You shift slightly. Your heel finds the edge of your sandal, and even in the dark, the leather feels familiar. This wasn't always the case. You remember the first few days after getting them, how stiff they were, how unforgiving. You almost gave up. Thought about trading for a softer pair or going full John the Baptist and wrapping your feet in camel hair, which, spoiler, terrible idea. Scratchy, hot, and very unchic, but over time, the sandals softened. You learned their rhythm. They learned yours, kind of like your faith. At first, you didn't understand all the parables. The mustard seed sounded like agricultural trivia. The Beatitudes felt too poetic. You tried to keep up, but sometimes Jesus would say something, then pause and look around like he expected everyone to get it. You didn't always get it, but you stayed. You walked. You listened. Now, things begin to make more sense, not all at once, but in pieces. Like the way sandal leather slowly stretches around a foot until it feels like a second skin. You exhale, Jesus shifts nearby. Not speaking, just breathing evenly. You wonder what he dreams about. Probably not sandals, although, maybe, the man spent half his ministry walking across unforgiving terrain. From Capernaum to Sychar, Jericho to Jerusalem. Some scholars estimate he walked over 3,000 miles during his active years. That's a lot of footwork. A lot of blisters. A lot of sandals. You smiled. There's a certain holiness to that much walking. It's not glamorous. It's not flashy. It's slow, repetitive, mildly painful. But it gets you where you need to be. Eventually, you stretch your legs again, flexing your feet slightly. The muscles pull, but it's a good kind of ache, the kind that reminds you of where you've been. You glance over at your sandals one last time. They look peaceful in the firelight. Worn, cracked, slightly dusty, and completely dependable. Tomorrow, you'll slide your feet back into them, pull the strap just a little tighter, and head off to the next place, wherever that may be. But for now, here, beneath the stars, beside a sleepy Savior, with warm dust under your back and tired leather beside you, you rest, and it's enough. Morning in Judea doesn't so much arrive as it creeps, cool and gray, with the quiet confidence of someone who knows you're not a morning person. The fire's gone out. The goat is up before you. And Jesus? Already gone, probably off in some grove having a quiet conversation with the sunrise. You groan softly, sit up, and feel the stiff tug of legs that have spent the night on stone. The mat didn't help much. You reach for your sandals, half hoping they've fixed themselves overnight. They haven't. Still dusty. Still cracked. Still yours. You slip them on, wincing as the left strap presses into a raw spot you forgot about. Then you stand, slowly. Stretch. Hear a satisfying crack somewhere in your back. That's the sound of another blessed day on the road. A few others stir nearby. James, still snoring, Thomas, already polishing something suspiciously shiny. You glance at their sandals, noticing how different each pair is. Some thick and clunky, others thin and delicate. There's even one set that looks like it was patched together from boat rope and desperation. That's the thing people forget. In the 1st century, sandals weren't standardized. There was no ancient version of a one-size-fits-all Jesus 3000. What you wore depended on your class, your job, your region, even your foot shape. Historians still argue about whether Judean sandals were modeled after Egyptian or Greco-Roman designs. Some believe they were inspired by the practical footwear of desert nomads. Others suggest the style came via traders, evolving over time into a hybrid of fashion and function. What we do know? Sandals were so crucial that Roman soldiers could be punished for letting theirs fall into disrepair. You don't mess around with your soles, literal or spiritual. You step into the street, the dust is cool and fine this early, clinging to your feet like flour. A woman passes carrying a bundle of grain, her own sandals wrapped tight with vine cord. A boy chases a chicken, barefoot but laughing. And off in the distance, someone's shouting about figs again. Jesus reappears just as you start wondering if he's ditched you. He's calm, refreshed, and carrying a smile that says, "Yes, I've already had a full spiritual awakening today, thanks for asking." You fall into step beside him. The day's walk begins slowly, part pilgrimage, part group therapy. The road is uneven, with sudden patches of gravel that force awkward half-hops. You catch a loose stone in your right sandal and do the world's slowest interpretive dance, trying to shake it out without stopping. Jesus chuckles. Need help? You glare playfully. Need new sandals? He nods, glancing at your feet. They'll last one more day. It's hard to tell if he's reassuring you or predicting something ominous. You walk, the terrain changes again, more hills, more thorns, and, yes, more goat evidence. You start to develop a sixth sense for where to place your feet. The sandals creak now with each step, speaking to you in the language of tired leather. As you walk, Jesus starts talking, nothing heavy. A story about a man who tried to fix his roof with wet clay, or maybe it was about pride. You're not sure. The metaphors get slippery in the heat. But you laugh anyway, and that seems to be enough. A merchant passes you, leading a mule piled high with tanned hides and leather scraps. You eye the materials like someone craving dessert. The merchant notices and offers you a pair of sandals for only 4 denarii. You laugh. That's more than my feet are worth. But you glance again. Some sandals were made of cowhide, others from goat leather, and the really fancy ones might have bronze studs or dyed straps. Of course, that kind of flair was reserved for Roman elites, temple priests, or Herod's entourage, not dusty wanderers with questionable sandal hygiene. Still, it's tempting. Jesus notices your hesitation. Style fades, he says. But blisters are forever. You keep walking. A few hours later, you stop near a cluster of trees. Someone's straining water through linen into clay jars. It's warm, a little bitter, but it revives you. You sit beneath the shade and slip your sandals off again. Your feet have earned the break. There's an indent now where the heel pressed into the sole, your personal signature, like an ancient passport stamp. Someone beside you points at the tread and says, "That's how they identified criminals." You raise an eyebrow. True, he says. Sandals left patterns in the dust. If someone stole olives and ran off, you'd follow the footprints. The soles gave them away. That's oddly specific. And a little brilliant. No surprise, then, that sandals show up in law codes and contracts from the time. In some cultures, handing someone a sandal could seal a deal. In others, it symbolized shame, like being found unfit to carry another man's shoes. You flex your toes. These old things? Shame-proof. Mostly, the sun creeps higher. Jesus finishes a quiet conversation with a shepherd and motions for the group to rise. You put your sandals back on. They don't complain. Neither do you. As you stand, a small piece of the heel finally gives way, a gentle tear, more sigh than snap. You pause, press it back into place, and say a quiet prayer for adhesive strength. You'll make it. One more town. One more lesson. One more day on the road. The sandals know the way now. They've molded to your story, and they're not finished yet. You walk a little slower now, not because the day is hotter, though it is, or the road rougher, also true, but because the sandals are on their last leg. Quite literally, the tear in the heel has spread slightly. You can feel it shift under your weight, threatening to widen with every step. It's not catastrophic, yet. But it's enough to make you think carefully before placing each foot. Still, you keep walking. Because in first-century Judea, sandals weren't things you casually replaced. Leather wasn't cheap. Skilled cobblers weren't always nearby. And, let's be honest, your feet weren't exactly considered priority assets in the broader story of salvation. A few others notice your limp. Peter offers you one of his sandals with a shrug. Never mind that he's got feet twice your size and a gait like a fisherman fighting a storm. You decline gently. Jesus glances back, just briefly, as if checking your pace, then says nothing. Somehow, that makes you walk straighter. The path ahead winds between olive groves and low scrub, dotted here and there with fig trees and ancient stones. You pass an old well, its rim smoothed by generations of draw ropes. Nearby, two women fill clay jars, their sandals barely holding together themselves, tied with extra strands of flax, soles so thin you wonder if they're walking on air. You nod at them, and they nod back with that universal look that says, "Yep, sandals are the worst." As you walk, you start thinking about the little roles these simple things have played in Scripture. There's Ruth, who removed her sandal as part of a legal agreement. There's John the Baptist, who famously said he wasn't even worthy to untie Jesus. That last one hits differently now, because after weeks walking behind Jesus, watching him dodge thorns and step over vipers, soothe people with words and sometimes just with silence, you get it, you really get it. To unstrap his sandals would be intimate. Personal. A moment of deep humility. It would mean kneeling before someone who's been everywhere, who's seen pain and dirt and stubborn Roman roads, and choosing to serve anyway. Historians still debate whether that line from John was meant literally or symbolically. Maybe both. Either way, it's a detail that sticks, kind of like the pebble now wedged under your arch. You pause, lift your foot, and do the now familiar jig of sandal removal. It's a practiced routine. Unloop the strap, kick slightly sideways, hope the pebble dislodges with minimal effort and maximum dignity. It doesn't. Jesus chuckles softly. Need help now? You glance up. Maybe. He kneels beside you without fanfare, lifts your foot, and gently tips the sandal. The pebble falls out like it's been waiting for its exit cue. You stared at. He looks up at you and says, not joking, "Blessed are those who walk in peace." You're not sure if that's a beatitude or if he just made it up, but you nod like it's the deepest thing you've ever heard. The journey continues. The terrain flattens out into farmland, wheat swaying gently, goats bleating from terraced hills. Somewhere nearby, someone's singing off-key, the melody carried on warm wind. It smells faintly of olives and sun-warmed sheep, and always, beneath it all, the soft rhythmic scuff of sandals on soil. You start to notice things you never did before, how each footfall leaves a different imprint depending on the ground. In clay, your sandals leave perfect shapes. In dust, just wisps. On rocky patches, barely a trace. It's a reminder of how fleeting some journeys are. How even your best steps might not leave a mark, but they still matter. Jesus stops at a fig tree, inspects its leaves, then smiles at the tiniest green fruit hiding beneath the branches. Too early, he says, mostly to himself. He steps back into the sun, and you realize how his shadow lengthens with the afternoon. You take a break by a small stream. The cool water beckons, and without thinking, you pull off your sandals again, dipping your feet into the flow. Relief. Bliss. The kind of sensation that makes you sigh out loud and forget that anything ever hurt. You scrub your sandals gently in the water, just a little. Enough to loosen the grime. There's something oddly reverent about it. Like baptizing your footwear. Like acknowledging that even what carries you needs care sometimes. Nearby, Jesus rinses his hands and watches the water swirl away. Clean sandals, clean heart, you ask with a grin. He shrugs. Depends on where they've walked. You both laugh. When it's time to move again, your sandals go back on, slightly damp and slightly cleaner. The cracked sole still flaps a bit when you step, but it's hanging on, kind of like you. You walk until the sun dips low again, shadows stretching like threads across the landscape. The day ends in a village tucked between limestone ridges. Not much here, just a few homes, a tiny synagogue, and a bread oven that smells like heaven dipped in sesame. You settle down with the others. Remove your sandals. Set them carefully by your mat. You notice the tear in the heel is wider now. Tomorrow might be their last day, and that's okay, because today, they got you here. They carried you through dust and heat and a pebble that nearly broke your spirit. They walked beside Jesus. They heard laughter and silence. They made a sound in the dust that no one else will ever make. They were enough, and tomorrow, you'll walk again, even if it's barefoot. You sleep deeply that night. Maybe it's the fatigue, or maybe it's the bread, still warm in your belly. But when dawn arrives, you wake to find your body reluctant to rejoin the living. You groan, stretch, and glance toward your sandals. They didn't heal overnight, naturally. The heel's torn almost completely through now, like it's trying to retire itself before you can formally dismiss it, but a surprise awaits. Someone's tied the sole back together with twine. It's not elegant, but it'll do. You look around and catch Bartholomew pretending not to notice your gratitude. He shrugs, mutters something about not wanting to listen to you limping all day. You're pretty sure that's first century Hebrew for, "You're welcome." Jesus is already up again. How does he do that? Chatting with an elderly woman near the edge of the village. She's gesturing wildly, talking about the cistern, or maybe the taxes. You can't tell. Jesus listens, nods, then laughs gently, and you find yourself smiling before you even know why. You put on the mended sandals. The twine itches, but the heel holds. It's a start. The day's journey takes you into gentler terrain, grassy hills that ripple in the breeze, like green parchment rolling out before you. The road curves alongside a shepherd's trail, and you spot dozens of sandals in the dust, different shapes and sizes, some with pointed toes, others with flat, raw soles. The herd must have passed this way just before you. You wonder idly what kind of sandals a sheep would wear, if it could choose. Probably something fuzzy. Probably not yours. Up ahead, Jesus pauses, motions for the group to take a break beneath a carob tree. You sit and pull off your sandals again, more from habit than need. The air is warm. The ground smells of earth and old sunshine. Thomas sits beside you and starts fiddling with his own pair. His strap has snapped, and he's attempting a complex knot with the help of a sliver of olive bark. You both watch in silence as he wrestles with the ancient art of figuring it out. You think Jesus ever had sandal trouble? You ask. Thomas looks up. What, like celestial arch support? You chuckle. It's strange to imagine the Messiah dealing with things like splinters and twisted ankle straps, but he did. That's the point, isn't it? Fully divine, yes, but also fully human. Which means sweaty feet, sore calves, and sandals that gave out just before the Sabbath. Historians still argue about the exact kind of footwear Jesus wore. Some claim his sandals had closed toes, a sign of craftsmanship and protection. Others insist he wore simple thong-style ones, better suited for hot climates and quick journeys. What's more certain? Sandals were never just clothing. They were symbols. Take, for instance, the Roman practice of removing a conquered leader's sandals as a sign of total submission. Or the Hebrew law in Deuteronomy: if a man refused to marry his brother's widow, she could remove his sandal and spit in his face. Now that's a ceremony. You glance at your own sandals. They've never been in a court case, but they've seen a lot. Mud, stones, sand, embarrassment, tiny moments of glory. Like that time you outran Peter downhill and didn't fall once. Probably the sandal's proudest moment. Back on the road, you pass through a Samaritan village. There's tension in the air, not loud, but present. People glance at your group with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Some nod, others turn away. You keep your gaze respectful. Jesus walks slower here, more deliberately. It's here that you notice something strange: a pair of sandals hanging from a fig tree branch, not tossed like trash, hung carefully, almost reverently. You pause. A local man notices your interest and explains: when a person dies far from home, and their family can't bring the body back, they sometimes hang the sandals instead. It's a way of saying, he walked here. He mattered here. You nod. Something about that settles deep inside you, because whether it's a life, or a day, or just a dusty road walked beside a carpenter from Nazareth, it matters. Even your sandals know that. You continue walking. Later that afternoon, your group pauses near a well surrounded by wildflowers. Someone finds a patch of shade. A boy approaches, selling bundles of dried figs and tiny clay flasks of vinegar water. You buy one with a lepta you didn't know you had. You sit, figs in hand, and slip off your sandals again. They look tired, but proud. The twine is holding. The dust has softened into a kind of patina. And somehow, even the crack in the heel looks like character now, a mark of the road. You run your fingers along the sole, tracing the line your foot has pressed into the leather over weeks. It's a map of your journey. A record not written in ink, but in wear and weather. You think of the man who hung his father's sandals on a tree, you think of John the Baptist's declaration in the Jordan River, you think of Jesus, asleep on a boat, feet dirty and calloused, sandals damp with sea spray, and you think, maybe holiness isn't just in the scrolls and the prayers and the miracles. Maybe it's also in the straps that I and the stitching that I and the everyday burdens your feet quietly carry. You wake to a rooster's call and the smell of wood smoke. Somewhere nearby, someone is already grinding barley for bread. The sky is still streaked with that pale indigo haze that comes just before dawn, and the ground under your mat is cool. Your feet feel the stiffness first, that it's a now familiar ache, not painful, just a reminder that you've been walking a long time. You sit up, reach for your sandals, and smile when you see they've been moved beside your blanket, the twine repair still holding strong. Thoughtful touches like that have become part of the rhythm. Today, the road veers toward the hills. Not the gentle kind, either. These are the type that make you rethink your life choices halfway up, steep, dry, scattered with flint. Jesus doesn't seem to notice. He climbs them with the casual confidence of someone who knows the story's already written. You don't have that kind of peace yet. The sandals don't complain much, though. Maybe they've settled into their purpose, or maybe your feet have finally adjusted. Either way, the climb doesn't hurt like it used to. You find a kind of sleepy pleasure in the crunch of dirt, the tug of each strap, the steady rhythm of foot after foot after foot. About halfway up, Jesus pauses and points out a vineyard in the distance. It's terraced into the hillside, the vines woven neatly along low stone walls. The workers have already begun, he says softly. You squint. Sure enough, tiny figures moving among the vines, tying tendrils, checking leaves, early birds. You murmur. Jesus smirks. Some will join later. Their wage will be the same. You remember the parable. The one about the landowner and the laborers. People love to argue about that one, about fairness and reward, and what it means to arrive late but still be welcomed fully. Historians still debate whether that parable was based on real vineyard practices, or if Jesus crafted it to challenge economic norms. Either way, it's funny how sandals fit into the story. All those laborers, whether they came at dawn or dusk, walked the same dusty paths to get there. Their reward wasn't just in the coin. It was in the walk. You crest the hill and pause to catch your breath. The wind picks up. Behind you, the Sea of Galilee glitters in the distance. Ahead, another stretch of trail winding like a thread through patches of cypress and figure. You think back to a moment a few days ago when Jesus washed someone's feet, not just anyone's, Peter's. And James. And even Judas. That it wasn't symbolic. It wasn't a power move. It was just love. One by one, he knelt, took the sandals off dusty feet, poured water gently, and dried with linen. Even now, you can still see the way his fingers moved, deliberate, kind, unhurried. The way he lingered, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper. You remember sitting nearby, unsure whether to offer your own feet or just vanish into the shadows. You didn't. You just watched, and in that watching, something changed. You understood for the first time that holiness isn't flashy. It doesn't always raise the dead or walk on waves. Sometimes, it kneels with a bowl and sees the miles you've walked and says, "Let me take that burden, if only for a minute." The hill path leads to a tiny village tucked into a slope like it's trying not to be found. No inn, no market, just a few homes and a tiny stable. Children run barefoot through the dust. Their laughter bubbles through the air. One little girl stops when she sees your sandals. She points. "Broken," she says plainly. You smile. A little. She disappears inside her home and comes back with something in her small fist, 3 pieces of scrap leather, worn smooth at the edges. She presses them into your palm. "For patching," she says. "Papa does it sometimes." You blink, touched beyond words. You crouch down, thank her with a grin, and watch her vanish again into the shadows. Kindness, it seems, has very small feet. You tuck the leather scraps into your satchel. The sandals may just make it after all. Later that afternoon, the group stops near a quiet stream. You all eat figs and barley bread, and Jesus shares a story about a man who hosted a feast. How guests made excuses not to come. How strangers from the roads were invited in their place. You look down at your sandals and wonder if that's what you are, just someone from the road. A late guest. Invited not because you were special, but because you were willing to show up. Jesus finishes the story and looks around. "Many are called," he says softly. "Few are chosen." Then he glances at your feet and adds, "But all must walk." You don't know if he meant that literally or not, but it lands somewhere deep. You tie your sandals again, you walk on, the shadows grow long, the sky turns copper, your sandals whisper their soft rhythm against the earth, each step a gentle percussion of presence. And for the first time, you realize, you're not just following Jesus. You're becoming more like him with every mile, even if the path is dusty, even if the straps fray, even if the soles are thin. You're walking it. The sun sets earlier tonight. A deep orange glow spills across the hills, pooling in the valleys and setting the olive trees ablaze with color. The shadows of your group stretch long behind you, like a parade of tired pilgrims slowly melting into the dusk. You adjust your sandals again. The repaired heel squeaks softly with every step now, a kind of gentle protest that somehow comforts you. Like an old friend grumbling beside you, keeping pace. Tonight, you're heading to a home near Bethphage. A widow named Tamar has opened her gates to travelers for years. The kind of person who feeds strangers and never counts the cost. As you walk, your thoughts wander to something Jesus said earlier in the day, something about lilies of the field not needing sandals. He was being poetic, of course, but still. Must be nice to bloom and be barefoot. Tamar's courtyard is simple. Packed dirt, a low fire, chickens tucked into corners like gossiping old women. She welcomes you all with a kind of weary warmth. Not effusive, not grand, just deeply human. "Come in, you dusty things," she says, nodding at your feet with a wry smile. "You too, travelers." You chuckle, slip off your sandals, and line them near the door, where a dozen other pairs already wait. There's something communal about it. Like laying down your armor. A quiet ritual of arrival. Inside, the floor is swept clean, covered with faded woven mats. The smell of lentils, garlic, and warm oil fills the room. Someone's already napping in a corner. Jesus sits by the fire, talking softly with Tamar, asking questions about her goats. He's always asking questions. It's how he listens. You sit and stretch your legs. Your feet are grateful. The straps of your sandals have left faint impressions on your skin, little half-moons and diagonal lines like some ancient tattoo artist was drunk on symmetry. You rub them gently, then you glance over and notice something curious. Tamar's sandals. They're hanging near the door, looped neatly on a wooden peg. But they're different, thicker soles, dyed a reddish brown, with a decorative stitch around the edge. You've never seen anything quite like them. She follows your gaze. Ah. Those, she says. My late husband made them. Said I walked like a woman with purpose, so he gave me purpose-built shoes. You smile. They look strong. They were, she says, a shadow passing over her eyes. He made a second pair before he died. I haven't worn them yet. Waiting for the right road. You nod. There's something profound in that. The idea of waiting, not out of fear, but readiness. Like a runner poised just before the race, not rushing the journey but honoring the preparation. Historians still discuss what footwear meant for women in first-century Judea. Some argue that women of modest means often went barefoot at home, only donning sandals for travel or temple visits. Others suggest specialized sandals were a quiet form of expression, stitching patterns, dyed leather, even symbolic charms sewn into the lining, and here's Tamar, living proof of both. Grounded, practical, and quietly meaningful, you wonder how many paths her sandals have walked. How many markets? How many funerals? How many joyful dances in secret courtyards like this one, under a moon like tonight's. Later, after a meal that tastes better than you expect, how is lentil stew so comforting? You help wash dishes with a few of the others. You're scrubbing a clay bowl when you hear Jesus humming, not loudly. Not for show, just a gentle, almost childlike melody, carried on his breath. You freeze for a moment, listening. You don't know the tune, but it sinks into your bones like something you forgot you knew. Ancient and new at once. Tamar hears it too. She stops drying and just closes her eyes. Then you notice something else. Someone has polished your sandals. The dust is gone. The leather looks oiled, cared for. The twine has even been replaced with a tiny stitched patch, so neat you almost miss it. You look up, and Tamar shrugs. They carried you far. They deserved a little kindness. You don't know what to say. You just press your palms together and nod. Words feel too small for the moment. That night, you lie near the fire, sandals beside you, and listen to the crackle of burning olive wood. A cool wind seeps through the walls, and someone snores faintly in the corner. You think about all the steps you've taken, some with confidence, some with hesitation, some just because the person in front of you kept going. You remember how the sandals pinched at first. How the straps chafed. How you nearly gave up near Jericho, and now, they fit like they were always yours. Even the imperfections feel intentional. It occurs to you that the same might be true of your path. You may not walk it perfectly, but maybe you're exactly where your feet were always meant to lead you. You drift off to the sound of soft breathing and sandal leather warming by the fire. You wake before dawn, the fire still glowing faintly in the center of the courtyard, like a memory refusing to fade. Most of the others are still wrapped in blankets, gently snoring, dreaming whatever dreams exhausted travelers dream. The sandals are where you left them. You slip them on. They feel softer now. Warmer. As if they remember your feet. As if they've finally decided to stop resisting and accept their role as your quiet companions. Outside, the world is a watercolor. Hazy outlines of fig trees, the distant bleat of goats, a rooster somewhere announcing the arrival of the sun like it invented daylight. You stretch your back and wander to the edge of the hill where Tamar's home sits. From here, the road curls like a ribbon, slowly descending into the plains toward Jerusalem. You're not there yet. But it's close enough that you can feel the change in the air. Jesus joins you. He doesn't say anything at first. Just stands beside you, hands tucked into his sleeves, sandals half buried in morning dust. Eventually, he says, "You've come far." You nod. "So have you." He smiles. "Farther than you know." And then, after a moment, "Do you remember the first time you saw me?" You think back. Dust. Crowds. The edge of a lake. A boat. Laughter. Eyes like fire and water all at once. You remember not knowing what you were doing there, just that your feet had taken you to the right place. Barely, you admit, your sandals did. He says. You laugh, then wonder if he's joking. His face gives nothing away. You head back inside. Tamar is awake now, feeding chickens in her robe, hair tied back in a blue scarf. She waves you over and presses a bundle into your hands: olives, dried fish, a small round of cheese wrapped in cloth. "For the road," she says, "you've given us too much already." "You haven't even seen my winepress." She grins. "You promised to return one day." Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. The road tends to unravel in ways no map can predict. But the promise feels right to say out loud, like sealing a friendship with footsteps rather than ink.by. Mid-morning, you're walking again. The terrain shifts subtly, less rock, more dust. The villages are closer together. You pass a Roman milestone half buried in weeds. The inscription is worn but still legible, something about Caesar, something about distance. You don't care, your feet care more about where they're not going than where they are. Your sandals slap the ground with familiar rhythm, and you think about how these same soles might someday carry you into the temple. Or out of it. Historians still debate whether sandals were allowed inside sacred spaces like the inner courts of the temple. Some say you had to remove them, as a sign of humility. Others argue it depended on your role: priest, pilgrim, or passerby. Either way, it makes sense. Shoes collect stories. Dirt. Regret. Hope. Sometimes the holy place asks you to leave all that outside. Jesus says little today. He seems to be saving energy, or thought, or both. The group is quiet too. There's a weight to the air, as though even the wind knows what's coming, but there's still beauty. You stop for water under a tamarisk tree and watch a shepherd lead his flock past a ridge. The sheep follow in perfect disorder, stumbling, bumbling, totally trusting. You wonder how their feet survive this terrain. Their hooves aren't wrapped, aren't bound, aren't softened with leather, they just go, and still, the shepherd waits for them. Jesus is sitting on a nearby rock, mending his own sandal with a thorn. It's a small tear, barely noticeable. But he's focused on it, like this tiny act of repair is sacred. Why fix it, you ask? We'll be in Jerusalem by tomorrow. He doesn't look up. You don't leave something broken just because it's near the end. You sit beside him and watch the way his fingers work, careful, steady, precise. No rush. No frustration. As if he's tying something larger together. As if the sandal is a metaphor for something, but you can't quite name it yet. The road levels out as evening falls. You pass a grove of pomegranates, the fruit dangling heavy on branches like lanterns in the dusk. A boy sells roasted chickpeas near a well. You buy a handful and share them with a woman walking with her donkey. She says her name is Rivka. Her sandals are wrapped in cloth to cover holes. Too many pilgrimages, she chuckles. These souls know every psalm by now. You ask why she still wears them. They remember, she says. Each tear, each patch, a prayer answered. Or at least heard. Later, as the stars begin to dot the sky and the air cools, you find yourself thinking about memory, how it settles into things, not just minds but objects. Into cracked bowls, weathered doors, worn-out shoes. Your sandals know your story, even the parts you'd rather forget, and they still walk with you. That thought alone makes you grateful. You settle down near a fig tree for the night. Jesus lies a few feet away, one arm under his head, the repaired sandal beside him. You close your eyes, the day's dust still clings to your skin, but you feel clean inside. The morning doesn't wait for you to be ready. The wind has picked up, dry and sharp as flint, pushing little spirals of dust across the road. You pull your cloak tighter, but your feet, well, your feet have no such luxury. Sandals, no matter how lovingly mended, were not made for windstorms. The dust slips in under the straps, finds your heels, clings to your toes like it's trying to hitch a ride into history. Jesus walks ahead, robes flapping like sails. The others move quietly, with that peculiar stillness that only travelers learn, how to walk for hours without needing to speak, without needing to explain. By now, your sandals and feet are practically family. You know their limits. They know your stride. You can feel a new blister forming under your arch, like a little voice reminding you not everything sacred is painless. The road narrows. On your left, a steep drop. On your right, thorny scrub brush clawing at your ankles. And then, as you round a bend, Jerusalem finally appears, not in cinematic glory, but like a slow reveal. Stone rooftops, wisps of chimney smoke, the faint gleam of the temple far off like a star that stayed too long into the morning. Someone gasps. You're not sure who. Might have been you. Jesus stops that. He says nothing, just looks. You wonder what he sees. Glory? Grief? Some blend of both. The group pauses to rest beneath a crumbling wall just outside the city's reach. You sit on a rock and stretch out your legs, letting the sandals dangle. They're battered now, creased, dusty, almost shapeless. But you wouldn't trade them for new ones, because these know you. Historians believe Judean sandals were often passed down through families. Not just reused, cherished. Fathers to sons, mothers to daughters. With repairs becoming a kind of inheritance, every stitch a story, every sole a sermon. There's even a fringe theory that sandals were buried with the dead, not out of superstition, but symbolism. The final journey. A path beyond stone and soil. No one can prove it, but it lingers. It makes you glance at your own feet. Would you want these to follow you beyond this life? You don't know, but the thought isn't frightening. Just tender. Rivka, the woman with the cloth-wrapped sandals, joins you again. She's chewing on a dried fig and humming a melody that sounds vaguely like a lullaby. She looks at your sandals. They've aged well. Better than I have, you joke. She smirks. You think feet are meant to stay soft? You think of Jesus washing feet. Of how even he, teacher, miracle worker, Messiah, knelt with a towel and a basin. Not to polish or perfume, but to recognize that it wasn't about cleaning. It was about closeness. Rivka finishes her fig and offers you the seed. Plant it somewhere, she says. Even if you don't stay. You tuck it into your bag, unsure why. The group begins moving again. The final stretch into the city is paved with uneven stones that seem determined to twist your ankles. You walk slowly, feeling every imperfection underfoot. A man selling dates waves at you from under a canvas tarp. Children dart between alleys, barefoot and laughing, immune to the sting of the ground. Jesus stops once more. He kneels, not dramatically, not performatively, and reties the strap of his sandal. You watch him do it, and for some reason, it nearly undoes you. This man who commands storms, who speaks in riddles that make the sky listen. He pauses for a piece of leather that won't stay flat. There's something heartbreakingly ordinary about it. You wonder if sandals will be remembered, not just his, but yours. The thousands of steps, the dust collected, the tiny pains endured for the sake of something greater. Maybe someone will tell stories of them, maybe not, but right now, they're yours. And that's enough. The gates of Jerusalem draw closer, crowds thicken. Market smells waft through the air, cinnamon, vinegar, roasting lamb. A goat bleats irritably. A Roman soldier leans against a column, utterly bored. Your sandals slap stone. Harder than dirt. Louder, and then, you step across the threshold. You're inside the city. Everything changes. Faster voices, tighter spaces, layered languages blending in the air. Your feet know how to navigate it now. The sandals don't falter. They hold, they flex, they keep the rhythm. Jesus turns to you. He says only one word, come. And so you do. The city swallows you gently, not in a rush of noise and chaos like you feared, but like warm water in a deep tub, slow, immersive, a little disorienting. The air is thicker here, not just with scent but with meaning. You pass under archways, beside weathered stone walls, past doorways so low you wonder how tall men like Jesus don't knock their heads every time. The sandals adjust to the stone differently. Dirt gave under your steps. This ground fights back. Each cobble pushes upward, pressing itself into your soles like it wants to be remembered. Jesus leads the way. Not toward the temple, at least not yet, but through a residential quarter where women hang linens across narrow alleys and boys with slings chase chickens into corners. The smell of baked barley cakes hits you in waves, and for a moment, your stomach remembers it's part of this journey too. Your feet ache. But there's no blister you'd trade for comfort now. In the early days of Judean settlement, city sandals weren't built any differently than those for country travel, though some historians suggest wealthier citizens added layers of wool or flax between the sole and foot, stitched delicately to avoid sweat damage. You don't have that luxury. But what you do have is a kind of spiritual insulation, the knowledge that every step brings you deeper into a mystery you didn't know you needed. You stop beside a fountain where women are filling jars, laughing behind covered mouths. One of them gestures to your feet, long journey. You nod, pilgrim sandals, she says, approvingly. The good kind. Real cowhide? You look down, suddenly unsure. Second-hand, you reply, she shrugs. Even better. The leather already knows how to behave. It's a strange compliment. But you tuck it away in the folds of your memory, along with the smell of clay and honey and the sound of her voice, light as thread. Jesus pauses beside a stone workshop with an open doorway. Inside, a sandal maker is hammering new soles into shape. Wooden molds hang on the walls, each one carved to represent a different foot shape: wide, narrow, flat, high-arched. A dusty sign hangs overhead: Tarsus Goods and Repairs, want to stop? Jesus asks, you hesitate. It feels odd to consider a new sole this late in the story. But you nod. Inside, it smells like leather, oil, and stubborn pride. The craftsman doesn't look up right away. He finishes his stitching, knots the thread with his teeth, then wipes his brow and peers at you both, feet or talk. You glance at Jesus, who says, both. So you sit. The man unties your sandals with the care of a priest handling scrolls. He examines the wear, the seams, the soft parts that should be firm. These have been somewhere, he murmurs. Not just miles, meaning. He pulls a newer strap from the shelf, but then stops, as if reconsidering. No, he mutters. They need something else. He rummages behind a curtain and comes back with a scrap of hide that looks older than the city itself. Egyptian, he says. Found it in a market near Aswan. Soft as a sigh. He replaces one cracked strap with this relic, carefully tying it into your old pair. The mix of old and older somehow makes the sandals feel truer. They'll hold, he says. Through whatever comes. You don't ask how he knows. Jesus thanks him, not with coins, but with a story. A brief one, about a man who traded sandals with a stranger on the road and then couldn't tell which life was his anymore. The craftsman laughs until he coughs. You step back into the street. The sandals feel different. Not new, better. They don't resist the city's stone now. They listen to it. That afternoon, you walk without aim. Just letting the streets teach your feet what they need to know. You pass an olive seller, a boy chasing a hoop, a Roman officer scowling at a chicken that won't move. You catch sight of a young girl sketching sandal shapes into the dust with a stick. Her mother calls her away, and the drawings vanish with a gust of wind that it hits you. Then how temporary everything is, even footsteps. The streets forget quickly, but maybe the sandals remember. You think back on every place they've touched: the shores of the lake, the rocky hills, Tamar's yard, Rivka's laughter, the fig seed in your bag, the ridge overlooking the city, all of it, absorbed into the leather. The scholars still argue whether ancient Judeans saw objects as holy, or simply useful. Did they believe sandals were part of a person's soul story? Or just tools to get somewhere? You don't need their answer. You have your OWN.AS. The sun begins to dip and the shadows lean long across the alleyways. Jesus says, we'll rest here tonight. It's a small rooftop, borrowed from someone who owes someone else a favor. There are mats laid out, and a jar of water already waiting. You sit. You untie your sandals. You look at them and smile. They're not beautiful. But they're yours. Tomorrow will bring its own dust, its own road, its own weight, but tonight, your feet are home. The final stretch is the quietest, not because the road has emptied, but because your heart has. Not in a sorrowful way, more like a vessel finally poured out, ready for something new to be poured in. You walk beside Jesus one last time, and neither of you needs to speak. The silence is the conversation now. Your sandals feel looser. Not because they've broken, because you have. Broken open, maybe. Or just softened, like leather that has finally learned to listen. You step past a grove of fig trees. Some bear fruit, some don't. Jesus pauses beside one, looks up, then smiles at something only he sees. You don't ask what it is. You just stand still, letting the shade fall over you like a whisper. The road turns downward. The city fades behind you. The hills ahead are golden, kissed with that late light that makes even dust look divine. You notice your footprints as you walk, faint but visible in the soft path. They last a moment before the wind sweeps them away. Maybe that's how it should be. In ancient Judean culture, sandals were sometimes removed during sacred moments, not out of disrespect, but reverence. The ground itself could be holy. The act of unstrapping a shoe meant, I know I'm standing in something bigger than me. You kneel, slowly, and slide yours off. The leather is warm from the day. You place them beside you on a rock, your toes sink into the soil. It's cool. Soft. Surprisingly alive. Jesus watches you, and for the first time, he says nothing. Just nods. Like he's been waiting for this. There's a stream nearby. Not much, a trickle. But it's enough. You walk over, barefoot, stepping gently. Every pebble says hello. Every blade of grass leans your way. You kneel at the water and splash it on your face, your arms, your feet. The dust lifts away. You stay there a while. Long enough to forget where you're supposed to be. Long enough to realize you're exactly where you need to be. When you return to your sandals, they look different, not cleaner. Just calmer. As if they, too, have been baptized. Rivka appears again, as if summoned by memory itself. She carries a small pouch of oil. For the leather, she says. And for the feet. She kneels and begins to rub it into the straps. Her hands are gentle, practiced. She hums a tune under her breath, a lullaby you now recognize. You're going to walk more, she says. You'll need them. You nod. Of course you will. The journey doesn't end here. It never really does. You look up. The horizon stretches wide, beyond hills, beyond time. Jesus begins to walk again. You follow, not out of duty. Not out of fear, but because your feet have already decided, and your sandals, they carry the memory of every step that brought you here. And now, the road falls silent, the hills fold themselves gently into shadow. The sky softens from gold to gray to the deepest kind of blue, like cloth drawn over the day's noise. You sit by the path, sandals beside you, the warm stone at your back, the night leaning in. The air cools, calm and thick with the hush of crickets. You breathe, and the breath sinks deep. There's nothing more to chase. No more steps to count. Your journey, this one, at least, has arrived at its resting place. The leather of your sandals curls a little in the cooling air. The straps, once stiff and unyielding, now lie flat, like ribbons after a dance. They've done their job. And they'll be there tomorrow, but tonight, your feet need nothing more than this stillness. You close your eyes, let the dust fall away, let the weight slip from your shoulders, the world of ancient stones and sandals fades, not with a door shutting, but like a candle dimming, slow, steady, kind. The scent of olive wood lingers. The echo of laughter from distant markets. The whisper of robes in the wind, and the gentle rhythm of footsteps, yours, his, woven together like a prayer. You are safe, you are known, you are home. Let yourself drift now, softly, slowly. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.